I'm Dan Weingrod, and I'm one of the founders of this august group, Connecticut Social Media Breakfast. We've been going on now since September with some really great success. I want to just do what I usually do at the beginning, which is kind of take a poll of the audience. How many of you are here for the first time for this event? Okay, kind of what I figured. We're sort of moving on into sort of another area in the social media universe, which is terrific, because it really just proves how much social is really affecting just about everything that we do and everything that goes on. So really excited to have you folks here. Would love it if you could continue coming to some of our other events that are going to be held here. And that's actually really what I wanted to talk about before we got started. Our next event is going to be on June 2nd. It's going to be a Thursday. Okay, and it's really going to be very exciting, because we're going to have, as our speaker, Edward Boschus, who is the Chief Innovation Officer of Mullen, the Boston agency that was named the #3 agency in the country by Advertising Age, and one of the top innovative agencies in the country by Fast Company. Edward is a brilliant speaker, smart guy, really understands how to fit in the world of social media, new and emerging media, into the advertising world. You shouldn't miss this discussion. He's really a great guy. If you've signed up on our page, you're on our mailing list. We'll get information to you on this over the next couple of weeks. But really hoping you can make it, and hoping you can let people know about it. The other thing is a little more long term. We are now, we're going to go into a little bit of a summer break, so we can have a little bit of relief. We may plan a get-together in the late afternoon or evening for a change in the middle of summer instead of early in the morning, just as a little cocktail party in the middle of the summer, something like that. But we're going to start up again with a bang in September. Tentatively, our date is September 23rd. We'll have more information as we go. And our plan is to do a half-day session. So a little bit more time, breakfast and lunch, okay? And the idea here will be to do a half-day education session, which will include keynote speakers and sessions where we're going to look for people from our group, from Connecticut, to sort of do some of the education sessions and the like, to help us really build this opportunity. So a lot of people here who've got great talent in social. We've had a lot of requests for people to present. This is an opportunity for you to help educate some of the rest of the folks in the state, and then an opportunity also that we've had from a lot of folks to get more hands-on information about social media. How do I actually do this? How do I actually do that? That will be part of the presentation. The details are obviously sketchy at this point, but I wanted to let you guys know about it. What you're going to see, again, if you're in the mailing list, is a call for presenters. We're going to look for people out in our community who'd be interested in presenting, and obviously a call for people to sign up for that. Probably going to have some sort of cost associated with this, a little bit more than this, which is obviously free, but I think it'll be well worth it as we kind of move forward. So thanks a lot for coming, and I'm going to introduce Phil Simon from Quinnipiac.
Thanks, Dan. Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming this morning. You can say a lot of things about social media and journalism. There's three things that are very clear, is that its impact on journalism and news is big in three ways. One, the way the news is gathered, the way news is written, and the way it's distributed. That, you cannot dispute that it's going to change that aspect of journalism forever. The background on me, I'm the director of the Interactive Communications Program at Quinnipiac. It's a graduate program, 36 credits. And we're very lucky today that our panel is all related to Quinnipiac one way or the other. I'll introduce him briefly. Andrew Visano is an alumnus from 2010 alumnus. He's currently the marketing manager at Main Street Connect. It's a community-based set of news websites based in Fairfield. They're going to be expanding into Westchester in June. And if you're wondering, yes, they are a competitor with Patch. At Quinnipiac, he was the general manager of the Quinnipiac Chronicle, and has worked on websites for the university, the QChronicle.com. So he represents kind of the local aspect of social media and journalism. Representing more the state and national perspective is Rick Hancock. Rick's been covering news in Connecticut on TV for a long time. And he's actually currently the digital platform director at Hartford Current, Fox 61. He was one of my first students at Quinnipiac back in 2005. He has a degree from here in writing communications. He's been blogging for more than 15 years, doing online journalism. In 2003, he's one of the first broadcasters to actually launch a blog. He's been involved with it for a long time. Tim Malloy, who represents more of the international perspective. He's our journalist in residence at Quinnipiac this year. He's been doing local network news for 33 years. He's been all over the world covering news in either whether it be natural disasters or human-made disasters. He's been embedded in Iraq and Afghanistan, filing TV reports, blogs, and so forth. He's won 5 Emmys, and he's awfully experienced, at least in terms of international perspective. Finally, our moderator, after each of our guests does a roughly 10-minute presentation, Rich Hanley, who's been at Quinnipiac since 2001, has a 23-year career as a journalist. He's assistant professor of journalism here, and he's the director of the graduate program in journalism at Quinnipiac. He's frequently on doing public opinion and news pieces and a guest commentator on the radio. If the name sounds a little familiar and you listen to Faith Middleton, he does the politics, burgers, and pizza bit with her on a basis.
Beer.
Just always very
Beer.
beer. What did I say? Pizza. Pizza?
We'll add pizza to that. I like that idea.
I think at the very beginning, it actually sounded like popping something open. I
Well,
heard that.
we were.
Yeah. And it's always.
Thanks to our listeners.
Also in our audience is our brand new Dean of School of Communications, Lee Camlet, who's here this morning to be a guest. We're very happy to have him at the university. He's also a journalist for a long time, where he was been a producer and former head writer for ABC News World News, and a variety of other assignments in the news and journalism industry, including winning Emmys and so forth. So I'm really happy he's here today and he could join us. So with no further ado, I'm going to give it over to Andrew. Zano's going to come up and do a...
Just one quick note, our hashtag for today, hashtag SMBCT, so if we can work hard, maybe get American Idol off the screen there.
Well, you know, I did...
No, we can't really do that, but...
I said, what should we have on the screen as people comment? And I want to do something that was really showed the dichotomy, the great distance between two ways that social media are used to cover current events. People dying and people getting kicked off, so. So let me switch over to PowerPoint here. Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Andrew.
So I'm Andrew Bizzano. I'm a marketing manager at Main Street Connect, as we already were briefed. That means I'm responsible for marketing, merchandise, promotions, and obviously social media. I started all 8 months ago. I graduated in May, so here I am now back at QU, which is great. The towns in Fairfield County are currently the towns we're in. We have 10 right now. June 1st, we'll be moving to Westchester with 31 new sites, so it's going to be a bit different. While I was here, we started with a few. We had 2 sites, then we went to 5, then we went up more. And at 10 sites, it was something that was manageable. I could sit there and manage 10 sites. It was tough. We have a lot of content. We have at least 5 to 10 new pieces of content on each page. So the Daily Greenwich has 5 to 10 new pieces of content every day. Stanford has 5 to 10 new pieces. That's not including the 10 to 20 new pieces that are posted every week on the magazine pages. So as you can see, it was a battle, it was a struggle. Going into 41 is going to be impossible for one person to do. So, you know, we have towns like Easton, which is quite a podunk town. You might not even know it exists. But we have the Daily Easton, Connecticut. And you can see it's a small town, Easton. 91 Facebook followers, 56 Twitter followers. Not the greatest number in the world. But then bigger towns like Norwalk, obviously, our oldest site, our longest time building the community, we have 790 Facebook followers and 404 Twitter followers, which to us seems like a great number. I'd obviously want it to be a lot higher, but as right now, I think we can live with that. It's grown exponentially. So as I said before, each page, each news page, sports page, schools page, and neighbors page is completely different. There's 3 pieces of news a day. There's 5 sports stories, 2 school stories, a neighbor's profile. All of these things have to get posted somewhere. So they're being posted on our site, but how do we distribute them to social media channels? Do they all go to Facebook? Do some go to Facebook? How do we choose? Who does it? Who manages that? So the problem that I had with a community news site where each site has its own Facebook page, each site has its own Twitter profile, each site has its own reporter, it's much more segmented. There's no county-wide where I can send off one tweet and reach thousands of people. We have to send out 10 different tweets or 10 different Facebook statuses to reach the amount of people that a newspaper that covers a county or a state might have to do. So there's a lot more extra work building a community site where we have to service one town different than another town, different than another town. Because as I said, what's news in Easton isn't news in Darien, isn't news in Norwalk, it's Easton's news. So it has to go out on Easton, but it doesn't go out on Norwalk. So as we handed things over from me to the reporter, we created an MSC style guide. So I've built this page, it's a big doc, it's 15 pages of how to do it from front to back. We have reporters who never used Twitter before, never used Facebook before, might use it for a personal use. But what we've had to do is teach them how they can become part of the community. We want to use these social media tools to become part of the community, to become a fabric. We don't want to just swoop in, report, and swoop out. We want to create conversation. As our CEO says, and I hate this term, but he says it every day, so it's sort of ingrained in me, we want to create the digital town green. You know, we want to be the water cooler where people can come and discuss the things that are happening in their community, discuss the movers and shakers, discuss, you know, their friend down the street who's running a new charity organization, something like that. We want to create that place where people can talk. And that's, you know, these are the tools that we've given them, the style guide. So now they're not only distributing content, but they're participating in the conversation. They're asking for, you know, what do you think of the new budget code? What do you think of the new first selectman? What do you think? They want to know what the reader thinks, because the reader is who we want to represent. We don't want to, you know, everyone can write the story about the mayor. Everyone can write the story about the new Board of Ed person. But we want to write about the people that it affects. So it affects the community members. It affects the moms and the dads of these school-age children. We want to get their side of the story. So we've created all these documents, and it's tough. As you said, as I showed you, it's 10 different sites now. It's going to be 41 soon. We've started creating documents to track how social media is helping us, how many posts are, you know, what's a good number of posts for the day, 3 to 5, how many Twitter posts, how often should they interact. All of these things we've started to create baselines for so that we can see if they're hitting it, how it's affecting social media, how it's affecting our traffic to our sites. So just over the last few months, as we've started building these new baselines, new documents to see how everything's doing, to train all the new reporters, we've raised social media referrals to 11%, where we were just pushing every piece of content that we were producing, we were just pushing it right to the Facebook page, right to the Twitter page. And we've learned that that's sort of going to scare people away. That's too much content. You're doing too much almost. You're clogging up their feeds. So we've scaled everything back a little bit. We've created the human element where people start tweeting on their own, start posting their own Facebook statuses. We want the character, the style of the reporter to shine through. One of my fellow QU alums, TJ Buzzio, he was in Wilton for a while covering for the dailywilton.com, and we moved him to Stamford. It's closer to his town. He lived in Stamford. He lives in Stamford now, so he's more familiar with the area. He knows who's who, what's what, and Wilton was up in arms. They were not pleased that we had taken away their reporter, and that's because he became a part of the community. It wasn't just someone who, as I said, swooped in and swooped out. He was creating dialogue with readers. He would go for coffee hours with people. He would respond to tweets, respond to Facebook statuses. So it was more than just a reporter. It was like a trusted news source, and that's what we try to do with all of these social media platforms. So right now we've grown, and as a network of our 10 sites, we have 2,700 Facebook followers and 2,100 Twitter followers, which our sales team likes to say makes us one of the most followed social media news sources in Fairfield County. That's one of their main selling points, even though a lot of them don't really know what that means. So as I said, it's a two-way street. You know, in the large one in the back, you can see, you know, somebody asked about the new exams and the snow days when we had this terrible, terrible winter, and all of those comments ended up leading to a completely new story as a follow-up, using these people's quotes. Our reporter reached out to them on Facebook, sent them a message, sent them an email. Some of them already had their contact information, and we got a whole nother story out of it, because all of these people, we could tell this is something they care about. This is something that really affects them as community members. So what we did is we reached out and got their side of the story, put their faces and names on our site, their opinions, and that's a whole new story for people to react to. Down here, we started crowdsourcing potholes. So we would say, where are the worst potholes on your street, in your town? Is Main Street the worst? Let us know. And what we did is we did this in a few towns. We did this in Norwalk. We did this in Fairfield. Some of the bigger towns. And people were responding, saying, "Oh, Post Road's really terrible. You know, right here at the cross section. You know, Flax Hill is the worst street I've ever driven down." And what we did, our reporters took that, compiled it, and went to the police, went to the transportation department, and said, here's what the readers are, your community members are complaining about. These are the streets. And this just happened a few days ago. So we're going to track that, see if they do respond, see if they start patching those holes. And that's something we want to do. There's a lot of cool apps out there that we're trying to integrate. I think there's one called See Click Fix. We're trying to integrate that into our sites where they can just click on the map and say, this is where the potholes need to be fixed. Again, it's a two-way street. We had a reader tweet me a photo. I was monitoring it. I was on TweetDeck at like 6 in the morning when I roll out of bed. I opened my computer and I saw a tweet. Hey, the train ran off the tracks in New Canaan. So I was like, oh, you have a photo? And he said, yeah, I took a really great photo. I'm going to email it to you. So he shot me an email. His name is Dutch Dosher. And he got this amazing picture of it's a little dark, but the train has gone off the tracks through the gate. He got it with the sun coming up. So we had this story before anyone else because one of our readers sent us the photo. He was going to get on this train to take it wherever he needed to go, and he just had this photo and he sent it our way. And I was on Twitter. I monitored it. I got it. I sent it to our reporter Melvin Nason. Said, "Get this up quick." Within 10 minutes, we had a story, and we had a great picture that our reporter didn't have to do anything. It was sent to us from one of our readers. This is a prompt, and one of the Facebook prompts that we've started using, instead of posting content and just pushing content on them, we're getting responses. So our Wheels and Auto editor asked, what was your first car? Do you remember your first car? Somebody responded, somebody emailed her, and we got this story, this guy talking about his car. Unfortunately, he had no photographs of the car, but he was so charismatic. He loved that car. It was everyone loves their first car. Everyone remembers their first car. So we got this story, and we ended up putting it right back on Facebook, saying, look at this guy. This is one of your neighbors. This is someone down the street from you. He loves his car. What about you? Do you have a new car? Do you have a favorite car that you drove? Maybe it was your second car. Let us know. And those are the things that we're trying to do so that we become part of the community. We become that digital town green where people can see the faces and names of their neighbors on our sites. And that's really what we're trying to accomplish with Main Street Connect. That's it.
So Rick's going to come up. We'll know the format because I realize a lot of you are new. Each is going to do about 10 minutes, but then Rich will moderate and then we'll take questions and answers. So if you have a question for any of our presenters, just hold on to it and we'll get to it a little bit later. So I'm going to
I'm not doing 10 minutes. Couple minutes. And while Phil's doing that, it's great to be back home in addition to being an alum. 5 years ago, I joined Quinnipiac as an assistant dean for school communications. I had just finished up about 10 years at Fox as a political reporter and anchor. Created a great friendship with Rich Hanley there, who provided me with a great opportunity to come to Quinnipiac to get my master's degree, and then persuaded me to pursue an opening in school communications as an assistant dean. So it's been a great relationship. A lot of people, Hugh, now they try to flunk me out of graduate school.
Despite my best efforts.
But yeah, despite that, I made it through. One of the things, if you follow me on Facebook or Twitter, I posted a link to essentially what the basis of some of the things I wanted to talk about. It's a pretty cool report, State of the Media Report 2011, Adapting, Surviving, and Reviving. So I'm not going to go through the entire report. Check it out. Pretty interesting. A lot of stuff that you probably know already. But essentially the summary of it was 12 months ago, the media appeared to be in a free fall. Mass layoffs, bankruptcies, and a general sense of demise blighted the media landscape. Much of our industry was on its knees. Then something changed. In 2010, the layoffs and closures began to slow down. The industry began to stabilize. However, at the same time, change became the integral of this new stability. New models were experimented with while each medium began to truly embrace the digital world. News organizations started to break down the traditional barriers and went mobile as well as digital first. This time last year, hundreds of newspapers and thousands of magazines had folded. The number of folds were fewer this year, but traditional media continues to move in a new media direction. Approximately 102 magazines launched as digital only or went exclusively online, while hyper-local newspaper-style sites grew rapidly, especially AOL's Patch.com. Television and internet continue to converge on platforms like Apple TV. Meanwhile, it began to look like the future of internet radio may be in our cars. The social media revolution invaded newsrooms everywhere, demanding that the media truly engage their audience on a new personal level. And the media appears to be evolving. Online staffs are growing, and social media editors are becoming a mainstay in newsrooms. So although there are still losses within the industry, successful organizations are adapting and moving forward. I told Patrick Parker, who's on my staff, he's my social media coordinator, I told him that there was probably going to be a good chance that I may be a little cranky, in talking about some of the stuff that we're talking about today, because I've done this panel since the 90s. We talked about the internet and the media. We've talked about Web 2.0 and the media. 5 years ago, like I said, when I started as a dean here, Bruce had me present a panel, blogging and the media. He called it Say It Loud, I blog and I'm proud. Because I incorporated blogging into a lot of stuff that I was doing as a professor here as well. And I still do. I still teach blogging as pretty much the fundamental. I'm also on the faculty at the University of Connecticut right now, assistant professor in residence, where I teach social media and online journalism, and still use blogging as a foundational entryway to teaching that. And now social media and the media. So it really all comes down to the same thing as the presenter before me was talking about. It's just making this connection. One of my favorite quotes, and I quote it all the time, A.J. libeling. I'm sure no one in this room is old enough to remember when he was writing for the New Yorker magazine in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. But he says something that I repeat almost all the time in presentations to really kind of define social media, make it easy. Two things, actually, before I go to the library. This is Facebook. You know, we've been doing this. This is Facebook. Some of us are friends. Some of us are connected only because of our interest in social media, digital journalism. That's the connection. A few of us had brief conversations back there when we were getting our grub. That's Twitter, really short bursts of information. We do that all the time. Some of the deals, I'm going to cut a deal with Hanley where we're going to make $1 million. That's LinkedIn. You know, that's the personal connection that we have. That's the business deal. So we've been doing social media for a long time. What's changed? Going back to the libeling quote. Freedom of the press is guaranteed only to those who own one. And for a long time, you had to have a lot of money to own a press, right? Now, all you need is a Facebook account. All you need is a WordPress account. All you need is a YouTube account. And now you have your own press and your own distribution channel. How many are familiar with the song Friday?
Let's be honest.
Okay.
Why? You've just infected my brain with it again.
Okay. Not once have you heard it on the radio. Not once. Last time we looked, I don't know, it was 50 million views on YouTube. It's by far the worst song ever written. It's the most popular. Go Google it or YouTube it. For a $4,000 investment, in the days of when you needed millions and millions, hundreds of thousands of dollars to produce, go to a recording studio to make a song that was going to become popular. Her parents ponied up a couple $1,000s and produced a cookie cutter song that makes absolutely no sense. None. How many have heard of it? Okay. If you haven't, you'll know what I'm talking about. Do yourself a favor on this Friday and go listen Friday. But the point is, now everyone. So for 5 years, I got to be an outsider. And for those that know me, and Rich will attest to this, you know, I've been throwing arrows and stones at corporate media, legacy media for years because they've been slow to adapt. They're resistant to change, and it's just an institution that you have to really shake them up to try to make change. And now I'm part of it. I'm in it, and trying to. And look, the bottom line for social media in the national and local scene, because that's what I'm supposed to talk about, more corporate, is that you'll find pockets of people doing great things. New York Times, MSNBC, a few other local efforts. We're getting better. We're not the best. Sorry, Patrick. Work harder. But we're getting there. We're getting there. So there's a resistance. You know why? Here's the bottom line. It's the bottom line. The $1 million question, corporate journalism, how are we going to make money in this day and age of free information on the web? The public is voting. They're not going to pay for content. I wish the New York Times well in their efforts to create this paywall, but it's already doomed for defeat the way they've set it up. They basically have said that if you're on social media, you can get our content for free because they value that. But if you're not on social media, you just want to come to the web, a very passive experience, you're going to pay. So already they're saying if you're using social media, we find value. If you're not, we don't. So there's a lot of different pay models people trying to develop and how to monetize and commoditize social media. It's just the way corporate media works. It's not how social media works. It's not how the internet works. So you're going to see a lot more consolidations. Despite the Rhodes report put out by this, I do think that you're going to see a lot more printed newspapers, going out of business in Connecticut and across the country. It's just the cost of printing a newspaper. And if any of you guys tweet this or put this on Facebook, I'm going to get in trouble. For my bosses who run the largest newspaper in Connecticut, but it's a struggle. It's a financial struggle. That's not a joke. That's for real. So there's a big push right now to try to figure out how to pay for this, and Many models are being tried out, many models have failed, some have been successful. So that's the real challenge of taking this medium, social media right now, where people want to connect, discuss, and now have the ability to distribute content to the people that care about the content that they care about, with the ability to pay for it. And that's the biggest challenge that we're facing moving forward. Because what you laid out is absolutely correct on how do you make those connections. Little tribes, people go to the net because they're looking for something. Social media has allowed them to find that something on their own terms in the small communities, which is so counter to the big traditional mass media broadcast model that we've always followed in traditional media. Now you have these smaller silos of niche, passionate communities. And now the question for corporate media, legacy media, is how to pay for it.
I actually don't really need to stand. No. Actually, I'll sit. My ticket to the story, I was a reporter at an NBC affiliate in Florida when 9/11 took place, and I went to the Scripps Howard people who owned the 8 TV stations as their group, and one of them was, I said, I want to go to 9/11 and cover it, which I did, and I came back and decided to start pitching them on getting to the wars and getting embedded. And my ticket to ride with them was blogging. I said, we need to be interactive, we need to go do these stories and report back and let our viewers watch the pieces I'm sending back via satellite and comment and set up some sort of communication back and forth. It was very crude in 2003 when I first went. I went with a camera person, something that looked like hot plates that you fold out and hit a satellite 18,000 miles up, bounce the stories back. After that, I went back 4 times as an embed with the Air Force and the Marines and the Navy, and I really built it around shooting. I went alone, used a camera like this, an iPhone, or something like an iPhone, and a flip cam, and was able to file stories from Iraq and Afghanistan and Kuwait pretty much independently using a laptop. There wasn't a whole lot of social media involved. I would blog with viewers who would watch my pieces satellited back. And we got a back and forth going between our website, WPTV.com in West Palm Beach, and me. So it was the last time I did that was about a year ago. Tweeting was, was gaining momentum. I did not tweet, nor do I yet. But I think if you, and Lee Camlett from ABC would know much more than I do about this now, but I believe that every major correspondent over there in Libya and Tunisia and Egypt right now are probably tweeting on some level with their viewers and readers. So I sort of scratched the surface on it post 9/11, and then as I was leaving the business to come up here, it was really kicking in, and it is a new part of being a reporter. You have to get in that stream, the tweeting stream, you have to blog, and you have to be interactive with your viewers, and that's the mantra at all the Scripps stations right now. It's even on a local level, you could be covering a murder in West Palm Beach, and you'll be talking about it with your viewers and your website folks. So that's, I have a little different background than these guys, but at least from the field, that's the future. And if I were to go back into the business, I would be quickly schooled in the tweeting part of it. That's all I got.
I'm going to need this, I'm pretty loud. I'm Rich Hanley from Quinnipiac University. It's really a privilege to be with some of my alumni from Rick in the Interactive Communications program, Andrew in journalism, Chris in Interactive Communications, Monica, Hugh is a colleague and whatnot. So it's part of our secret plan at Quinnipiac to take over the world. We've just seeded it with all these social network experts and women experts, and at one point I will send the signal and the world will be ours.
Creeping meatball.
Yeah.
That's the creeping meatball.
Yeah, so at least I'll make enough money to make me an emeritus chair and I can kick back with some cocktails. I'd take that too. But all of our panelists described a completely different environment of news and information gathering. I'd like to start the discussion with Rick. about what some politicians, athletes, and celebrities are doing with social network. They're actually bypassing even new media to go directly to their fans. You know, Chad Ochocinco, for example, wide receiver in the NFL, Sarah Palin in politics, you know, Tiger Woods in golf. These are just some examples. But Rick, what does that do to a journalist's job when they're being somewhat lapped by the people they cover?
Yes and no. That's a great point, but it goes back to the point I'm saying, freedom of the press is only free if you own a press. Now everybody can own a press, and the press being Twitter or Facebook. If you are doing your job as a journalist, look, I watch ESPN every single day, and without fail, they're always quoting someone who's using Twitter or Facebook in their reporting. It's okay. You know, if that's going to be the source that you have to go to, then use it. You shouldn't shy away from it. You should embrace it. It's just another resource that you can use. And not only will you follow those folks, follow the people who may be retweeting or commenting on what Sarah Palin may be saying or Chad Ochocinco may be saying. You have to embrace it, and even take it outside of journalism. I'm not sure if all of you in here are journalists, but whatever field you're in, who's ever talking about your brand or talking about your area of interest, you need to follow those people because they're talking about you anyway. So you need to follow them. So as a journalist, you certainly have to follow. Yes, they're bypassing you, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You can't prevent that. You still, as a journalist, have your due diligence to check accuracy, transparency, challenge and question. You don't have to let it just go because Sarah Palin says something. You can fact check it against other available resources. But I think it's a great thing that people are getting their stuff out there.
So it's part of the journalist's job now to follow certain
definitely.
personalities and to actually get stories from these sorts.
Definitely.
Andrew, and you're in the local news arena. You mentioned about having too much content, you know, on a Facebook news feed. How do you strike that balance between overwhelming your audience with content and thus turning them off, and cultivating that audience with content they can use and react to?
Right. So, as I explained, we have X amount of content that's published every day. And the problem was between news pages, magazine pages, autos, wheels, food, we were pushing out content that was, some of it was county-based, some of it was town-based. So sometimes we were pushing out things that affected only Stamford residents to Easton residents. It didn't affect them at all. Why would they read about it? Why would they, you know, if they seriously cared, they will go and find it. That's the beauty of it, is that there's the unfollow button. If you don't want it, you don't have to get it. So what we tried to do is localize everything down to who's going to care and if they're going to care about it. So what we did is, you know, only Easton news goes to Easton out on social media. So only Easton's Facebook page, the Daily Easton, and the Daily Easton's Twitter page gets Easton stuff. That doesn't mean that they can't go to the dailyeaston.com and read, you know, the magazine page about the new restaurant opening in Stamford, or the new, you know, the kids event that's going to happen at the Maritime Aquarium in Norwalk. So we've localized the Facebook and Twitter pages even more than what we did with the actual news pages, the actual website that we're creating. We've funneled everything down to the lowest level of local. Only that stuff gets pushed out to our readers on those social media channels. But if they do care and they do want to find out, they can always come to the site and find it their own way.
As far as marketing opportunities, Andrew, locally, because Google and others have identified local advertising as a gap, you know, in the model. Do you foresee, or perhaps you're already adopted the strategy, where you use that sort of connection with the audience for direct sale to ads? Someone will buy an ad and you'll tweet about it. Is that part of your business plan?
We've actually started developing that recently. We have a very strange business model that's working and it's going to work. But we write stories about people and places and businesses that support our community. So when we do write that, our you know, the reporter that covers that, the writer, he will tweet that, or she will tweet that out and mention their name, and then they'll retweet it to their followers. So we are using these tools and both, you know, for content, but also for advertising. You know, we like and favorite all of the Facebook pages of our advertisers on the town. So if it's a Stamford company, we'll like their company on the Daily Stamford's Facebook page, or we'll follow them on the Daily Stamford's Twitter, and we'll retweet them if it's something that's interesting or something that affects them. So, we're reaching out using these tools, again, pushing content and all that, but also reaching out to our advertisers and showing them that it's exciting, that it's popular, and that people are using it.
Do you, in the old print business, I just can't even get that word out. It's like talking about the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles, so I've seen them. Yes. In the print business, there was always a slug advertisement about something that looked like news content. Do you make that distinction?
Yeah, we do. We do have a tag that says, this company is partnered with Main Street Connect with an annual visibility package. It might not make sense to everyone, but it links to a new page and it explains all about how everything works. Everything that's written has to adhere to editorial guidelines, has to pass through our copy editors, through our managing editors. So we're not writing, oh my God, this is the best food you've ever had. It's about how this person has come over from Poland and it was their dream to open this pastry shop, and just highlighting people in the community that are doing great things. We're not saying that you have to go there and this is the best food ever, but we're just profiling them and putting the spotlight on the people that matter.
Rick, do you see that at your?
We're not doing that. And
Why not?
No, but
Is this our
I'm
$1 million plan, by
but-
the way?
Huh?
Is this our plan to make $1 million?
Yeah, no, but all I'm saying is that concept, is just so foreign to traditional journalism, what you're talking about. But it has to go there. That's just the bottom line. Again, please don't tweet this. Turn the camera off. No, I'm way on the record. I am so progressive in my newsroom. The Hartford Courant, the oldest continuously published newspaper. We just celebrated the 150th anniversary of the Civil War. The Courant was around. It was reporting on the Civil War.
I think some of the reporters.
Yeah, there's still so this concept of connecting, of what is journalism, who's a journalist, connecting with that revenue. That's what I was just talking about. They have to find ways. They have to try it. Is it going to work? Ultimately, the audience, the crowdsource, the audience is going to determine if that content, if you mislead them or misguide them in any of these ventures, then you're done.
Absolutely. So
you have to balance that. But on the other hand, you have to try it. But there are a lot of people in newsrooms you can't even try. I'm not endorsing it per se. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but it's the right thing to do to try something. I'm trying some crazy stuff in my newsroom right now that people are looking at me like I'm crazy. But we have to do it because until we can put a pay box on the internet and have people dropping coins to pay for it, all this cool stuff that we're talking about with social media is going to be irrelevant because we won't be around to produce it.
Speaking of pay, and I'll turn to Tim for this, it's expensive to send correspondence overseas. It used to be, as you know, Tim, field producer, sound, camera, correspondent. Now those 4 positions have been collapsed into one. Is it possible for a correspondent, in a hot zone like Afghanistan, to properly cover combat or appropriately cover combat conditions, having to do all these tasks?
You're not as thorough as you would with a producer or a camera person. When you're shooting your own stuff, which I did, you're missing something. You're thinking technically, you're thinking lighting, you're thinking sound. So the answer is no. But the upside to the organizations is that the one-man band is the future, and it costs nothing compared to 20 grand to send a crew, $1,000 to send me, especially if I fly with the military, which I did on 5 occasions. So it's virtually free, with the exception of what it costs as satellite tax. But the answer to the question is, even on a local level, and this is the great argument in local newsrooms, is we hire young people to send them out there, but accuracy suffers, the pieces don't have a good look because it's not shot by a professional photographer, and it's all jammed together in a hurry on laptops. That's the big sea change in the local business, and it's going to head toward the network business too, because they're not going to be able to sustain it. It's all going to be, I believe it will all come down to one, they call it one-man band.
Right.
The backpack journalists.
Do you think the fact that the web aesthetic which is sort of grainy, if I may use an old film term, or not as polished as broadcast news packages are. Do you think the audience will accept news in that raw, slapped together fashion and still have that news hold the credibility it presently carries?
I think they will, and I think they already have. You see Skype interviews on CNN and MSNBC, the shaky footage from Cairo shot with, because we all have these little cameras now, we're used to looking at our own shaky footage. It's sort of just part of life now. So I think the beautifully sculptured, fashioned, 60-minute, it's 2020 type piece is we'll all appreciate it when it comes around, but the standard will be a pretty rough looking, hard looking product.
So one more point about international. How many correspondents are depending on, they may be based in London, for example, are depending on Twitter feeds from crowds in Egypt, Tunisia, Damascus, etc., for their sourcing? I mean, they're not physically meeting sources, but they're just monitoring Twitter feeds. How much reportage is going on through that mechanism?
I don't know. Can we ask Lee?
Lee?
You're raising a point that, as a journalist and as a citizen, and now as an educator, imagine that, concerns me because I see social media as a double-edged sword. To one extent, it allows us to go places we've never gone before and to get information from places that we've never gotten it before. But on the other hand, and I've seen examples of it, where it becomes the cheap way to do something. Instead of, I think it's great that the local sent Tim Malloy overseas to Iraq and Afghanistan, but now it's easier to do a Skype interview instead of sending a crew and getting a quality interview. Perhaps, and they guise it as, now we're being cool, now we're being part of the social media, when in fact they're doing it on the cheap. And that concerns me. And it concerns me that, a lot of this stuff is gathered in. You're right, a correspondent in London may take in some tweets, they have no clue who that person is, they have no clue about the accuracy of it, and it gets dangerous. And it gets dangerous. I also worry about the speed at which social media moves, and the Gabby Gifford thing is a perfect example of how that train left the station and people were trying to climb on board before they checked it out, and it gets dangerous.
Yeah, but I also, we can cherry pick, instances where social media failed. I can do the same in traditional media.
I'm not saying it failed. I'm saying that
I think it failed in that case because.
Well, it failed in that case, but what I'm saying is that it can induce a certain laxness, and also induces anxiety. Jiminy Christmas, NBC just reported that Gabby Giffords is dead. We better, let's put that on our site and we'll quote NBC. We'll say NBC is reporting. That's sloppy journalism.
Andrew, at the local level?
It's tough to bring that down locally. We did a lot, when Egypt was the spotlight. We were finding, there was an Egyptian shop owner right down the street from us, and we went. And when things were happening, we actually had our reporter was standing in there with an iPhone, and he was just interviewing him, and then he would walk back to the office down the street. So we try and localize things that are on an international level. We try and bring them down to find, we found residents of our town that had relatives in Japan, and they hadn't heard from their relatives yet. So,
Well, and I would suggest that in some cases, you can get more accuracy from a local level than you will from some guy sitting in London just collecting material that he has no idea who he's talking to.
You had these conversations, going back to blogging again, since the 90s, I've been doing these panels, and especially from classically trained, professional, highly accomplished, any more adjectives I put out there, we journalists, we still need to do our job.
Right.
I mean, and
I'm not arguing
but
against
on the other side of people who are social enthusiasts, digital media enthusiasts, whether it's blogging, social media, content creators, if you've never blogged or if you haven't really been a high power user on social media, it's tough. I mean, just to consistently put that stuff out there. So, the belief that people are just throwing junk out there, and a lot of people are, but on the high level hashtags on Libya and Afghanistan, Heck, even American Idol. People are serious about that because what happens, the crowd will rule you in or they will rule you out. And if you continue to put crap out there, people just won't, they'll just totally dismiss you. So I think that, but as journalists, we need to continue to check and do our job to take that information. It is wrong to cite NBC as and not without doing your own work of checking it out. We do it every single.
Right. I totally agree with you. I just worry that a lot of times it doesn't get done.
Andrew,
On an
you wanna-
international, if I can still comment, if I can still comment on an international level, if anyone's been following, what's been happening in the Middle East, NPR's Andy Carvin has been by and far the best guy to follow. He's not only retweeting, but he's also fact-checking while he does it. He'll ask for responses from people. If somebody sends him a video from Liberation Square, he'll say, is this happening? Was this now? Is anyone there? Can they tell me? And then, once he finds out, once he gets multiple responses saying, oh, that video was taken 2 weeks ago, he'll let you know that, the video I posted previously was actually, a fake. It was posted 2 weeks ago. So I understand your point, and it's obviously tough, but as you said, we still have to, as journalists, as reporters, as anyone really, they have to be the filter. You still have to filter it through. You have to take everything with a little grain of salt until you start hearing it elsewhere and multiple confirmed reports. Everything has to come with a grain of salt on any of these platforms.
Okay, well, thank you. I'd like to open up for questions to our panel. Anybody have any questions about the role of social? Yes, ma'am.
I guess you're describing a new way of doing things, and in a way, a new skill set that now journalists have to acquire, become somehow familiar with some of these remote places might be a bit tricky. I mean, is there a role for the School of Journalism to step in and kind of provide that leadership?
I could just talk about Quinnipiac. We do. That's what we teach. We have alumni. Actually, Quinnipiac, we dominate online media. I mean, Columbia is in our wake, Stanford, Berkeley, etc. They're long in the past. They're 20th century schools. We're 21st century schools. I can't tell you how many graduates of mine who are working in social media. And we also have a global profile, too. One of my students is presently working on a way to deliver news through mobile phones in Western Africa. And we plan to deploy pieces of that with the help of the guilt the French still hold over their colonies in West Africa. We're getting the French phone company to donate phones to people in West Africa so we could run a test of delivering news, bypass traditional printing, bypass even traditional laptops, and going right to mobile phones, because mobile phones are cheap, easy to set up networks, etc. So I can only speak for Quinnipiac, but I am very proud of our university's role in shaping the next generation of journalists.
But what about the journalists that that need to? I mean, they're already journalists. They need to learn this new skill set.
Well, I would suggest training. Our interactive communications program, for example, I don't want to be an ad, but they need to. I mean, a lot of this stuff is self-evident. They just need to embrace it and stop living in the past, as Jethro Tull would sing, as I reveal my age. They just need to really, it's Rick, a traditional broadcast journalist, I think is a good example. Yeah.
I know you had a
Jim.
Well, I was quickly. I was going to say that when I started out at WPIX in New York, I would go out and cover the Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx with a camera person. They're all men at the time. Cameraman, sound man, and a guy carrying the gigantic tape deck. So 3 people in a car and myself. I wasn't allowed to touch the equipment because it was a union shop, and we'd stop for coffee breaks because it was union mandated. A year ago, I went to Afghanistan with these little things and did it myself. I've had to learn how to non-linear edit on a laptop. I was technically horrible at things like this. I had to learn to shoot. I knew how to write and talk, but I had to become technically savvy, and so that's the change, and that is what we're teaching. I mean, the kids in the journalism school can edit on non-linear and shoot and tell stories, and they're spitting out kids that are ready to work in local markets here. And I don't know how far ahead we are of other people. I suspect we really are.
Well,
I've met really impressive seniors here who are ready to work in medium-sized markets in America, and I'd hire them.
Just to add, to demystify a little, we just spent a week, couple weeks ago, retraining a lot of our local reporters, our hyper-local effort. We're not really out to say we're competing against Patch or trying to outdo Patch, but that's essentially what we're trying to do, and we trained our town reporters in using our back-end content management system, social media tips, and the like. But ultimately, what it's going to come down to, journalists, we're passionate about telling stories. So just don't worry about learning everything. Just learn what you need to follow your passion. If you love telling stories about your local community, about international events, about sports, politics, entertainment, find the right tools, because they're going to change. I'm looking at your Flip cam. Flip was the bomb a couple of years ago. It just went out of business. It's gone. When I started here at Quinnipiac, I was teaching blogging in MySpace. When I finished at Quinnipiac, it was blogging in Facebook. No more MySpace. So the tools are irrelevant. Just find the right tools that you can engage your audience and help you fulfill your passion as a journalist.
The point is, here at Quinnipiac, we don't teach like this specific application and you must learn this specific application. What we teach is the ability to embrace any application that comes along and not fear teaching yourself how to use it or asking somebody else how to use it. So we just teach a level of adaptability, which is this key skill in the 21st century. It's not necessarily having to learn a certain package or application suite. It's how to adapt to changing technological innovations and do it effortlessly. So it's more of an attitude or a piece of character than it is a vocational keyboard. In other words, we don't teach necessarily keyboard stuff, although we do. You know, it's all whiteboard stuff. How do you conceptualize stuff differently as the technology evolves and the audience demands it? Andrew?
Yeah, it was just like, you know, when people started putting newspapers on the web, that was a whole new skill set that needed to be learned. Now we're just advancing that to a whole new level. So as the skill set went from learning how to operate a printer to learning how to input something into a content management system, it's the same thing. It's just a new skill set that you have to learn, that you have to do to survive. I mean, if you're not doing it, then you're going to be left in the dust at some point. It's a new skill set.
Q? Yeah.
Yeah, not for Andrew, but for anyone. Where do you draw the line on insipid content? And I'll illustrate that. I'm on Facebook too, and I do this for a living, kind of at a local level, you know, developing small events. So I have to keep up on it. I subscribe to Danbury, Connecticut. I don't know who the hell is running it. I don't think it's you.
No.
If it was you, and you'll recognize what I said. They tried to, and I'm using the term wrong, but they tried to astroturf a community. You know, and they said, hey everybody, what do you think about what happened on American Idol last night? And I responded, hide all by Danbury, Connecticut. Because I'm not subscribing to Danbury, Connecticut for them to elicit a comment about Rebecca Black or Charlie Sheen, maybe Charlie Sheen, or certainly American Idol, the most corrosive thing to thought processes in America. Do you have a standard of practice on that? And Rick, I could say that for you know, Fox 61 as well. You're on a bigger level, so that does appeal to a bigger audience. But where do you draw the line?
Yeah,
do you see pushback from an audience on that?
We want the people to care. We want them to care about what we're putting out. So if we feel that people do care, I mean, we've done a Justin Bieber story. I think everyone who's in journalism has to have done a Justin Bieber story at some point because their editor made them, because it's good for traffic. We've done a Justin Bieber story, but the only reason we did a Justin Bieber story is because, you know, a Westport, there was a movie premiere and they won a special screening. So, do you listen to Justin Bieber? We'll ask for that maybe once. You know, we'll ask for, did you watch American Idol, if there's a contestant from American Idol that's from our area. So, you know,
that happens so rarely.
It's so rare. It's and I'm glad it is, because otherwise everything else on Facebook is asking the same question. You have to stand apart in some way. You have to stand apart locally, news-wise, in any way possible. So, you know, we can ask you what your favorite car is, what your favorite first car was, but we're going to put a local face on that story because we have to, and I think everyone has to.
I think I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think for insipid content, it comes down to repeat offenders.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like asking one question about American Idol, I don't even watch American Idol, I never have. I'll skip that. Now, if there are repeat questions like that, that's when I'm going to, you know, act with my mouse and unlike or hide.
Yep.
I was wondering like, I'm a hard ass, you know, and
Yeah.
I proactively put in quotes, "Hide all by Danbury, Connecticut." Do you get any pushback from your audience?
Obviously, there are unfollows. I mean, I track every Monday. I go on and I say, "Oh, we lost one today. You know, what did we do?" And I'll look. And sometimes it's just we weren't posting anything, or sometimes it is we posted too much. We posted 10 articles one day. You know, that's killer.
The Newtown Bee is making that mistake right now, but I'll just throw that out.
You know, again, I'll go back onto in the big picture of where I sit, you know, I am judged on page views. I am judged on traffic. And sometimes, you know, we do look, what's the most viral video? And if it's the naked woman being rescued off the cliff in Denver and it's getting a gazillion video views, and anytime you put the word naked on a website, that's a click. You know, so so clicks mean what to me? Clicks mean dollars. So American Idol, well, I work for the Fox affiliate, so it's on my. So I'm putting up. Well, you know, they want me to say that. I'm pushing American Idol. You know, you will get American Idol news on Fox Connecticut every day. But that's the business aspect of it. So you do have to weigh. I have to pay for this content. It's expensive. It's expensive to produce high quality news content, and that's just. And I'm not going to apologize for trying to figure out ways to pay for my content. It's the reality.
Funny that you talk about when you talk about local news. My parents used to get the local paper for their local town news, and they ended up stopping from getting it because there was never any local news about their town in it. And they found that they got more online than they did about their local town than the local newspaper.
Yeah, we create all our own content. We don't use an AP wire. We don't use a wire. We write it ourselves. So everything gets localized. If it's not local, you know, if it is, you know, someone in Denver, you know, we'll try and localize that. We'll find someone that can comment on it in our towns. You know, we don't use anyone else's material. We use all our own.
The funny thing was my parents, they live in Old Saybrook, and I think New Haven Register was putting out their local paper. They were getting more news live from the New London Day than they would. And they didn't know until they went and looked. And it was just funny the way it worked out like that.
Phil? Tim, can I role play with you for a second?
Whoa.
Okay.
Are you recording this?
Camera closer.
So,
Post it.
see, that's a question. I figured I might get your response this way. I'm a editor/publisher. Tim, I want to send you back to Afghanistan. We've got some great new video equipment. It's small, light. You're going to love it. It's great. Also, I have a new iPhone that has a super battery that'll last for a week. We'll have to charge it for a week. So in addition to all that stuff you've done in the past about covering, and we'll do your daily live spot and feed and well satellite, sure. But I'd like you also to tweet as things are happening. So when you get shot at, and you're just trying to save yourself, you know, the helmet on and all that. Can you tweet about that at the moment? People will love hearing what's happening to you when you're getting shot at and how you're trying to save yourself. We'll do the story at the end of the day about what's going on. But if you could tweet live while you're sitting there,
Where you shoot it too.
no, I can shoot it. That's right. Look, there's a camera on both sides.
Front-facing camera.
You can tweet and what do you think? The camera lasts a week.
The joke of the business now is that we're all going to be wearing these things on our heads.
Anderson Cooper, he did it.
Anderson Cooper really, you know, I was not a believer when he started, but he's done it all. First of all, I was never shot at much, so I don't want to establish that. But I would take that as a challenge and try to do it.
Do you think it affect the way you cover a story that you're now expected to write about it at the moment?
It would be like a live shot, and it would be like the same thing as having a camera on it, and it would be unvetted and unresearched, and it would be hopefully not careless. The accuracy could suffer. I don't know. I like to have my stuff looked at before I do it.
But think of it as if there's a camera on you all day long. Someone else is holding.
Well, that's absolutely inevitable.
But don't you select like when you're going to actually broadcast out? I mean, there are certain times when you arrange with your producer, or you'll call up and say, "Put me on now."
Put me on now. Yeah.
But time is irrelevant now.
I know, that's the other.
Right, no, I was saying, it's inevitable. There will be people who are they're just live machines. They're just walking around live.
You can go on
I
our
think it's
website now.
doable.
We
I
have,
think it's doable.
we live stream, Ustream 24 hours. You can look,
Yeah,
people,
Ustream.
people voyeurs now. We just have people, we put up cameras and people just,
But professional journalists doing that?
yeah. Professional, and going back to your question about Twitter, a lot of heavy Twitter users, we had Helen Ubinas and a few of our other reporters during the Cheshire trial. Tweet, they end up using Twitter as their notebook as well. I mean, it kind of helps from the courtroom.
Yeah.
It's not war, obviously, but
I know,
but you end up using your
reporters
Twitter
live now.
feeds and notes as kind of helping you take notes to go back and write a fuller, complete.
People looking at your notes as you take them.
It's transparency. I think it's great.
I've covered huge trials in the last few years in Palm Beach, West Palm Beach, and there's a very good woman who was a court reporter there, and I would sit next to her, and she's just like going live, going on the Palm Beach Post newspaper website live, and I'm watching what she's writing, it's just going live.
So the training, when you talk about training journalists, in the olden days, you could think about what you're going to write for a day, maybe a few hours, maybe an hour. Now,
You still can.
you're in the courtroom and there's expectations you're going to tweet about as it happens. You're not thinking about what you're just.
Yeah, but you're doing your homework before. You're still talking to people. You're still calling sources. You're still trying to get the prosecutors. Still trying to get defense attorneys. Still trying to get. You're still being a journalist. It's just this is a new aspect and component of doing your job.
Any students I'm teaching, I'm saying you've got to learn to be live and really good and know your stuff on the spot, in the instant, in the moment. Whereas we used to, for the 6 and 11 newscasts, have time to go back and structure something, sit with an editor, write it, pick sound bites, make a nice tight little 2-minute package. As you say, Jeff Schneider was my producer in New York at Channel 11 for years, and that's what we did. We would run it by you before we went on there.
This is very true. And what I was going to ask Rick is, doesn't that kind of, though, in a sense, blur the lines of journalism? If you're sitting in a courtroom taking notes and tweeting, you're not really, there's a line between writing what's actually going on and reporting what's going on and being emotional to a reaction of what was just said, which is not really a reporter's job, to be reactive. Oh my God, this guy just talked about the horrific crime and, lighting the house on fire and the kids on fire, whatever it might have been, because then you're putting opinion in it. And I know that news has gone to, there's reporting, and then there's what the MSNBCs and CNBCs and Fox and CNN, it's a lot of opinion also. So where, the whole lines of journalism have been blurred in the last 5-10 years, social media being the newest form of that blurring of the lines.
If I'm allowed to put on my journalist professor hat, in the history of journalism started, especially in American journalism, of the pamphleteers and folks like that. I mean, the history of journalism has always been opinionated. And the best journalism tends to happen when you're really pissed off about something. But about the opinions, it's no different court TV if you're watching television. The public would see that raw emotion. Now, the cameras aren't in the Cheshire case, but there are other cases where the cameras are in the courtroom. So the public can kind of see. So if you're just providing that raw emotion that, the Jasper Howard trial, the football player from University of Connecticut during his sentencing, that got very, very emotional. And our reporter was in there, basically just kind of, Jasper's mother said this, colon, and just basically tweeted, or what the stepfather says, I can't forgive you. And the gasp from the courtroom. That's reporting. I mean, that's not opinion in my
What you're saying is absolutely reporting. I agree with that. But you can't. I think if you're tweeting, you almost can't help though giving your own personal emotion and your own personal feeling, which is not reporting.
Well, I think the platform will determine. Our bloggers have a lot more freedom. Our social media enthusiasts, journalists have a little bit more freedom. But when it's in the 20-inch column in the newspaper, or if they're doing a 90-second broadcast report, you'll get that straight news. But in the other platforms of engagement and interaction, of using the social media platforms as they are used as a dialogue engagement with your readers. If you gave it to them straight, that's not the best vehicle to be using social media. If you just want to give them straight news, you don't want to use those tools.
No, I was just going to say, if you all want to see an example of a journalist who has, to my mind, learned how to really take advantage of all social media, follow Jake Tapper, who's the ABC correspondent at the White House. Because what he does is he tweets all day long about what's going on at the White House. He blogs, and he basically uses that material, he collates it for his piece on World News, and then he puts it on abcnews.com. I mean, he's got it all covered, and he seems to be going like 24 hours a day. He's got a new baby, so that will explain it. But if you just want an example of somebody who really has got it, Jake Tapper is a good example.
Yeah, there's a lot of examples of that. You see it in the Times now also,
Yeah.
where people are, you sort of got like the media decoder blog, which comes out, and then that becomes an article a few hours later.
Exactly.
Something like that.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
to all that point, I mean, like what I like, I did follow Helen when she was reporting on the Cheshire murder trials, and I think, you know, in social media we follow people to get a little bit of that personality. So I like Helen's personality. I like the way she writes. I like even, you know, what she puts in the physical paper. So if I wanted to follow what was going on with the Cheshire murder trial, I'd follow Helen. And then if I wanted to get the bigger story, or, you know, the actual article, then I would go to the Current, you know, and read about it. So I think we sort of follow some journalists, at least I do, because we like their personality and their style of writing. But if you want the actual hard story or the packaged story, then you go to, you know, current.com, or you go to CT Now.
It's the
I
gateway.
think it's important to point out that journalists go into events like this trial with the context already embedded in their consciousness.
Mhm.
And that's reflected in how they tweet. That's why Jake is very important, because he has Washington, the Beltway, embedded in his consciousness. And that's reflected in his decisions on language, things to tweet and whatnot. And then what he does is he applies that context in the physical world at night. So that's why it's, with journalists going into a story, have the context, they're just tweeting the blow by blow. It's like a boxing writer,
Right.
just doing the blow by blow, and then they'll go back and write the full piece afterwards. So I think with journalists doing it, there is a certain management of that content through Twitter because of their context. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to ask a question, I think mostly for Rick and Andrew, about how you measure success on your social media pages. So I guess what numbers are most important to you? Is it how many people are physically responding on the Facebook page? Do you look most at how much you are pushing traffic to your website? What are kind of the key things that are important to you with those pages?
I'm not a big, as far as pushing the traffic off of social to the website. Yeah, I mean, but as Patrick always preaches to our folks, every tweet doesn't need a link to anything. I just love the level of conversation. For me, that kind of is success for me. If we can really engage people in non-anonymous commenting, that even if you disagree, you know who is calling you names. That for me is success, because that for me is what social media is all about. That level of engagement, interaction, and making a connection with people who are passionately interested in that subject matter. That's success.
It's like a wheel with spokes. We want everyone to come back to the website eventually. That'd be great. But our Twitter feed is one spoke where, as you said, not everything needs a tweet. Not everything needs a link. I mean, we're reaching out in different ways. We'll ask a stat, we'll ask something, and not asking them to click back to the website or to read this or to go further, but just connecting with them. So, they might remember, oh yeah, the other day that reporter responded to me. I'll go read the Daily Norwalk today. That's what you hope happens, and that's sort of where the social network becomes ambiguous. You can't track it. There's no return on investment that you can say, oh, well, this person read this one day and came back the next. That's hard to track. But again, it's the spoke. Everything is a new spoke. So if it's Twitter or Facebook or a YouTube video, we're reaching out in all these different ways with our branding on it. So it becomes sort of a brand awareness thing, a marketing thing where, oh yeah, I saw that video on another website, but it was the Daily Norwalk's video. I'm going to go look at the dailynorwalk.com today. That's what it has to be.
So are you both saying that your bosses aren't expecting you to report any kind of metrics?
Oh, no, I'm the boss.
We have
so
metrics.
I would find shocking, and I would say that you're very lucky, because I think anybody else in this room who's looking to do social media has to prove to their boss, we got 3 likes. This is what this means from our bottom line.
Oh, no, certain. Well, we find that more from, you have to wear a lot of different hats. How I talk about social with staff and with reporters is different how I talk about social to my bosses and who are concerned about page views. But I know Rich has been chomping at the bit to ask me this question. Jeff Fox just joined our staff yesterday. So we have seen some benefits of that in the social sphere for us already. One of the first things my boss has said about that is like, oh, we got to bring, and Jeff is a great blogger as well. He has a great blog. Oh, we got to bring Jeff's blog onto our website. I said, no, we're not going to bring Jeff's blog onto our website because A, having it off our site keeps our street credibility, keeps his street credibility. Because once you bring it into the corporate framework, it loses some of its luster. Because a lot of the stuff that Jeff talks about has nothing to do with weather or news or anything. It's just Jeff, and he's a big personality, and people like engaging with him. And the traffic, while he gets a lot of traffic for a single blogger, I guess I can't really say how many page views I get, but I get a lot of page views on Current and CT Now. Adding Jeff to that isn't going to boost my numbers, but the allure of the external world seeing Jeff as part of us is greater benefit. So you have to kind of balance that conversation about the power of metrics and volume and page views versus really kind of keeping some credibility and not everything. If you saw The Social Network and he talked about, he didn't want to put ads on Facebook. There's a reason for that. Once you start trying to monetize everything, and capitalize on everything, you're gonna lose the audience. Which is then the last point, the point that I said earlier. We still got to figure out how to pay for this thing, and it's a tough mix.
Okay, yes, sir.
I was wondering, kind of speaks to that point. How do you reconcile the need to make profit with the transparency of self-promotion? If that makes sense.
I guess that's for me.
Good.
Yeah, it's corporate. It's corporate. I'm working for a company. The commodity is news. We got to make money off of news. I don't have all the answers, but journalism is journalism. We have to we'll lose our credibility if we aren't transparent, if we're not ethical. If we don't, we make mistakes. If we don't aggregate content properly, if we, aren't doing things that we're supposed to do, we're going to lose credibility. Then that's going to hurt the bottom line. So it's in the forefront of everyone's mind who works at a company who has decided to make news their moneymaker, and just don't have all the answers. I'm not going to pretend.
The reader determines. If you're trying something new for X amount of months, and in that time frame you see, okay, no one's reading this or no one's looking at this, then the reader is going to determine what works and what doesn't. That almost means you have to take risks and get people to start tweeting, get people on Facebook. And I think that's what this is that everyone has to sort of take risks in this new Wild West frontier of news, social media, and how it works together. Everyone's trying something new, and everyone's trying to figure out what works. If we knew, then we would be making lots of money, lots more money. Hopefully we all start making lots of money. But, no one knows the answer yet.
And there's not going to be one answer. I think there's
right.
ProPublica, you have nonprofit models, and actually one of the few times that Rich and I have ever disagreed on things are the nonprofit, because he's not a believer that the nonprofit model works, and I think it could be one model. The corporate structure where it's all about just trying to have pull down ads. I know you people hate them. Those pull down, drop down things. People walking across your page. When you're trying to read stuff, autoplay on videos. But again, until we can put a coin box, I have to pay for this. I have to figure out a way to pay for this.
I don't know if folks would have a problem with self-promotion. Facebook is an organism based entirely on self-promotion, presenting an identity. whether it's personal, corporate, or professional. And I think the audience understands that context in which, because they participate in their own self-promotion, so they're not going to hypocritically, I think, dismiss all. They'll dismiss some, as Hugh pointed out, stuff that's really, really egregious. But I think in normal day-to-day stuff in journalism, it's just part of the terrain.
Yeah, Twitter brands that number. You have 500 followers. You know, you're worth 500 followers. It's branded right next to your name. It's your self-worth on Twitter, essentially. It's your reach. It's who you're talking to.
Yeah, you follow up. Go ahead.
So is it more about, excuse me, more about the information that you're given than, so if you're being transparently self-promotional, because everybody understands that it's about making a profit, if it's coming from journalism or we work for a nonprofit, but if you're putting out information that people want, does that not matter anymore?
No. I just think what you're doing is you're equating self-promotion with profit. And self-promotion takes many different forms, a variety of forms. It doesn't necessarily lead to monetary gain. It could be in the sense of nonprofit, a greater standing in the community, higher status, et cetera, which in turn feeds into more donations or more attendance at events like auctions or whatever a nonprofit does to raise money. So I think people understand that the information is useful, they will act upon it, regardless of its capacity to self-promote itself. If you get that, yeah, I think you do. Yeah, anybody else? Phil?
What do you think the impact of these smaller and smaller instant news bites under 140 characters, excuse me, is going to have a longer form feature journalism where, pieces like that someone might spend several months writing and end up being pages and pages of analysis that is spectacular stuff. Do you think people will not pay attention to that? They're not going to read on? You talk about, the reporter who can gather everything, who can tweet as well as do the feature piece. Maybe people are just going to read the tweets. I don't need to read the feature piece. I got this from this person. I think there's a danger that long-form journalism is in danger.
Jim, do you comment on that?
I think people will go find what they're looking for. I mean, I still watch 60 Minutes. I watch I listen to the BBC on the radio. I read New York Times and Wall Street Journal. I'm disinclined to just look at headlines and two-paragraph summaries of important things. I think all of us will look at it. Is that the question?
Well, it kind of is, but do you think publishers are going to be as interested in when, the bottom line?
Well, that's what the web is for. The web is.
That's what the web is for now.
That's what the web is for. Will people read long-form stuff on the web? I read the Times on the web now.
See, 10 years ago they were saying, long form, that's what the print is for.
Yeah. I think Twitter has spoiled me. I have no attention span for anything over 500 to 1,000 words. I can't read the Times on the web. If I have to click next page, I generally don't. It's not a great thing. I know it's not good, but I've been brought up in this soundbite culture that it's just not what I'm used to.
But also, there's a great book, Seth Godin. He's a prolific writer, writes a lot of digital stuff. His book Tribes kind of talked about that a little bit. You're still going to find people who are passionately interested in long-form journalism. Rich Hanley just won an Emmy for a long-form documentary. So this
multi-platform.
Yeah.
I want to see where these are available. Buy it now. Self-promotion.
And that's how Rich and I work. I throw him up, he hits him up. But there is certainly a need for that. I mentioned ProPublica. Have you ever gone to that website? I mean, there are forums and places. Will mainstream traditional media continue to be able to do that deep, rich, investigative journalism? Nah, not really. But there are places where people who are very supportive of that will be able to engage. And there's also something to be said, how many news outlets and organizations, look, again, news is a business, and there's no guarantees in the life of business. We're in the business school, and I'm not really all that great in business, but there's no guarantees. You know, and so if you will find, you can find small, passionate niches of communities that are interested in supporting and promoting and producing that long type of format of journalism, it's going to be there for people. It will never go away. Will it be as easily available? And will the newsmakers and the ivory towers of news organizations be able to solely make those decisions anymore? Probably not. But I don't think it's going away. There's a lot of places out there doing great long-form journalism, both in the digital and legacy platforms. So I'm not overly concerned about that. And yes, there's a attention span for people who just want the tweets. One of the exercises we did at UConn, one of the students, we tweeted the book Crowdsourcing. We tweeted every single chapter, every single page. So if you just wanted to read one little section, we tweeted all that. But if you wanted to read the entire compilation of the research that we did for the book Crowdsourcing, you could do that as well. So there are a lot of different ways that you can create long-form journalism, even using something that caters to 140 characters.
Represent the corporate world, so I'm going to go back to my PR department and try to figure out how can we now better work with you now that your world is changing. Do you have any tips for that?
The study, friend me on Facebook, if not, or follow me on Twitter. Get a copy of that report. That actually was written by a public relations marketing firm, Vicus. Great tips and information on marketing and PR companies. But any person in the PR world should be following the journalists who are reporting on their topic area, but also other people who are talking about your topic area as well. So go beyond just the journal and just get into the conversations. Join the conversations. Yeah. And use Twitter. People only scratch the surface of Twitter and Google, really. It has a great search functionality in that. Great search functionality. All the people we have, Patrick could tell me how many people we have as our Facebook fans. But if I search any of our Hartford Courant articles or Fox Connecticut news stories, there are people talking about us who aren't a part of our social fabric. You want to engage those people as well. You want to put your content where people are talking about you already. And I think you'll see some benefits from that as well.
It's monitoring your brand. If you're looking out for news about tennis, I looked at tennis. You should follow the reporters, the people that are writing about tennis, the top tennis blogs. But you should also see who's talking to them and who are they talking to. So it's just another place where you have to keep a hashtag or a search term of tennis or of Main Street Connect or of Norwalk, and just monitoring that, seeing if there's any chatter, seeing if when you can jump into that conversation and add your 2 cents.
I think part of what I think it's actually my question, what she's getting at is, how will your organizations pay attention to stuff out of a corporation that the corporation thinks is newsworthy in this world? Is it beyond just a press release now? What should they tweet about it and all that stuff? And how will you describe?
I'm on air twice a week. I still do stories. I have not done a story in the last 5 years that did not come from social media. I don't even know what a press release looks like anymore. Couldn't even go in my newsroom and tell you where the press releases come in. I could not tell you. I don't know where they come in. But I follow people. TweetDeck. If you're not on Twitter, if you ever get on Twitter, use TweetDeck. It's a great tool to kind of just any subject that you want to follow. All the tweets.
They're actually coming up with their own. They're trying to come up with their own Twitter alternative.
Yeah. You can make your own. It's not that hard. The thing I made earlier.
Right. Yeah, you can. Right.
Whatever.
There's a whole bunch of and they're going in a lot of different directions. And it's just a tool. Find any tool that allow you to monitor social conversations. Let's put it like that. So as Rich said, it doesn't matter what platform. We won't teach to a specific software.
What matters is what works.
Yeah. So just research and follow and. The social sphere will kind of just generate story ideas. You can follow what other people have been writing about, other blogs. Google Alerts, that's another great tool. That's old school. That's like 2007, right? 2006.
By the way, if your corporation is looking for someone to work in the social media department, we have an abundance of graduates who will be leaving university in May who are perfectly capable of handling that position for a very nice salary. Yes, ma'am.
I just had a random question. Dutch Dosher is a friend of mine, so I tweeted him that you had used his photo, and now he's freaking out on me on Twitter, asking me, where was my photo used?
He tweeted us. He tweeted the
Right.
Daily New Canaan, I guess it was.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
at Daily New Canaan.
Okay, thank you.
You had talked earlier about the coin box.
Yes.
I was wondering if I could get people's thoughts on the paywall. The official coin box, is it going to be just reserved for the national or international papers of record? Is it going to filter all the way down to, to the locals? What are your thoughts?
Personally, I don't think it's going to be a widespread success. We were talking earlier about Wall Street Journal. There are very few publications that can kind of get away with, because their content is so specific to a targeted issue, and people just want to desire that content. I think that's going to not be very successful. What's successful is like my iPhone with all the apps, and Androids, and my iPad with all the apps. People are willing to pay for content if they find value in and mobility in being able to use that content. It's nothing for me to drop. I literally, part of it's because of my job, but I'll spend a couple of $100s on apps on a regular basis. Not for one app, but just a collection of apps that I need, because I love and I want to take care of my iPad, and my iPad needs apps. And the best apps are the paid apps. So yeah, so I will pay for apps. It's on all the time.
You answer this as if you were tweeting the answer. What's the difference between a narcissist and a journalist who has a mobile device?
Hashtag nothing.
That's all of our panelists.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd retweet him. Hashtag nothing.
Well, maybe an example concrete, even though I don't think Twitter was around. Let's say when Virginia Tech, when the kid went nuts. I know somebody had a camera, a cell phone camera, took video, right? Yeah. Does that make that student a journalist because he took the video and uploaded it to YouTube?
You know, it's funny, I don't know if it's this building or not. I always have this conversation in this building about the definition of a journalist.
Well, my question is specific. Is it journalism or narcissism? Is there a reason? Should I even care?
There are elements of journalism in a lot of different...
But you have 140 characters, though, to answer my question.
If
You said none.
Okay, no, if, well...
Tweeted 5 times
if there's a high level of transparency in the news gathering and distribution of that information, that's an element of journalism. I think I have about 12 characters left.
You're good. You're good. I'll read your blog post.
He'll link to it, a bit.ly.
Any other questions? Maybe one more, 2 more? I think they'll be around a few minutes. We'll call it there. Okay. Thank you so much. Everyone was terrific.